E-A-G-L-E-S. Eagles.
And welcome in, everybody, to Birds 365 here on a Thursday morning edition. Sorry about that, John. I hit the back button by accident here to start off the show today. Welcome into a Thursday edition, everybody, brought to you by the great people at Fritz Bianculli Law Firm. All right, we got a lot happening here in Eagle land and NFL land, a lot of moves going on in the NFL yesterday. Teams dropping people like crazy, Johnny Mac. And as we get closer to free agency now, the turmoil and the crazy nature of the NFL is starting at the beginning of the new league year. How you doing on this Thursday morning, my friend?
Yeah, everybody doing well. Everybody putting their financial house in order. A lot of teams had to do that. The Dallas Cowboys, number one, and they're magically under the cap. So you see how malleable it is. You just sort of convert a bunch of money in the roster bonuses, then you can spread it out. So big contracts like Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, et cetera, they can just spread out over multiple seasons. So that's how you sort of generate that cap space. And by the way, I think a lot of people don't understand that's built into the contract. You don't need permission from the player to do that. That's sort of just a lever you choose. So it's not like you have to go to the player. And even if you did, the player's not going to say, hey, yeah, give me all the money up front. Right. So it's going to work either way. But you don't even need the permission. I think that's widely misunderstood.
And it doesn't really change much for the player, right?
It's actually better for the player because they get the money
cash.
Right away. Yeah. Unless you're very conservative and financial and you want it spread out, which some, maybe some people do, but
for tax reasons.
Yeah. Either way, that's some of the things that happens. And you and I were joking before we jumped on here. It's like, at this point, nobody wants to pay these guys these big contracts. And we're going to talk about a bunch of guys signing on March 9th. And 2 years from now, you see it all the time. You're seeing people are trying to get out of the contracts, and people are trying to move on and be more cost effective. So it's a cycle, and that's why when you hear Howie Roseman, and he wasn't the only one. A bunch of GMs are now catching on. The way that the easiest way to win in this league is draft well, re-sign your own, and then supplement in free agency. And there's people that'll bring up certain teams, Denver back in the day with Peyton Manning, that have won, going into free agency. And it can happen, but it's rare. The much more stable way to do it is to draft well and re-sign your own players. But that's not the sexiest thing in the world, as Howie also explained.
Yeah, no, it's not, Johnny Mac. But you are right, man. Your point about all these contracts are waiting to see in 2 years. It's probably going to be a whole different tune. And John, it does, and this has been true for a long time, but you have been adamant about this point. It feels to me a little bit more so this summer. The NFL moves fast, man. Man, does it move quick.
Yeah.
I mean, 1 year, 2 years, it's like it could be a whole different league sometimes, a whole different team sometimes, in 1, 2, 3 year periods. So, it's an important distinction to make, though, for fans as they get excited about players and signings and all different things. John, the old saying, never fall in love with the player. The name on the front is a lot more important than the one on the back, right, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, and remember, it's Jerry Seinfeld said it. You're rooting for laundry. You're not rooting for players because everybody's renting space. Everybody, even if they're here for a long time, they're renting space. But the Eagles will be here, barring catastrophe in World War III. But I digress. They will be here, and the league will be here. So the team will be here. The players will come and go, and that's just the nature of it. Everybody's renting space in this organization from Nick Sirianni on down. Everybody's got a shelf life, and that's just the life of the NFL.
No doubt about it, John. John, plenty of good topics to talk about here today. We got a great show planned. I want to thank and welcome everybody for being here on Birds 365. It's been a fun off season so far, and we really haven't even gotten into the good stuff. That all starts next Monday with the legal negotiating period, and you can already see what's happening with teams right now and the changes they are making. So plenty to do. We got Devin Jackson in hour number 2, so we'll talk some NFL draft, and I also want to talk some salary cap for the Eagles today. John mentioned you saw what the Dallas Cowboys did yesterday. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the Eagles cap space and what the Eagles might do to maybe get some more cap space, as John pointed out. Very malleable, and how he builds all his contracts for it to be that way. So we will take a look at that. And then we'll also take a look around the league yesterday. For those who were not as up to date on it, man, a lot of releases yesterday, a lot of wide receivers. I woke up this morning, I saw Darnell Mooney is getting released as well. So there's going to be some wide receivers out there. Does that potentially change, the value?
Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and does it also change what the Eagles might get back for A.J. Brown? Not to say that the players released are as good as A.J. Brown, but hey, sometimes the juice might not be worth the squeeze if you're asking for what Howie's asking for. It was reported yesterday he's looking for a Quinnen Williams type haul, which was a big haul, John. So that's a big thing there. So we're going to see how all this stuff shakes out. John, let's start with the salary cap for the Eagles, and then we'll get into some of those players, and then how we think it might play out next week for the Birds. But John, where are they on the salary cap right now? Just kind of give us the rundown and explain to us how you see it when you look at the cap. I think some people look at the cap and they either think, how are we going to sign people with this cap? Or they think Howie's a magician and, there's basically no rules. It's the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
I
mentioned.
The truth lies somewhere in the middle, John. Give us kind of your rundown as we stand a couple days out here from free agency.
As always, the two extremes. You have the one extreme is they say the salary cap doesn't matter. I mentioned this yesterday, and you can do whatever you want. You just manipulate things, which is incorrect. And then you have the other one that says it's not real. Which is incorrect as well. So, right now they're down towards not the bottom because there's a bunch of teams. There's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams that have to get under the cap. So right now they're over the cap. For those who don't know, the off season, eventually you'll get the 90 players. So you have to be cap compliant every single day once the new league year starts. However, because you can't keep 90 players under the salary cap, they have what's called the top 51 rule. So only the top 51 contracts count against the cap in the offseason. And that's another conversation we can have for 2.5 hours, why people don't understand when you sign somebody and you say, oh, it's going to cost this much cap space. It doesn't register because I shouldn't even go down this route because you're the top 51. So if you're in that, if you become one of those top 51, well, then 51 drops off. And the difference between that new contract and the 51st contract is what cap space you're losing. So that I think is very vastly misunderstood. So there's a bunch of teams who still have to get under the cap. The Cowboys were the most notable. They did by redoing a bunch of contracts. Yesterday, Minnesota is next. They're like 46 million over the cap, but they just haven't done things officially. They're going to cut Javon Hargrave. They're going to cut Aaron Jones. They're going to cut Jonathan Allen. They're going to redo a bunch of contracts. But they haven't done it officially yet, so they're still way over. The Eagles right now have 12.5 million of cap space, which isn't a ton. And what Spotrac does, actually over the cap, you got to give credit to credit. They do effective cap space, and that's really more important to me because that factors in your rookie class. So they really have like 7.4 million. So they don't have a ton of money right now. But again, you can create things like when Howie's saying, if you trade, if they do a big deal, if they trade for Max Crosby or something like that, he flat out said to you, if we do with something like that, we have to move somebody else. One affects the other, so you have to do some different things if you're going to make moves like that. Not that he's against it, as you saw last year with Micah Parsons and the realization they would have moved a bunch of shit around to get Micah Parsons because that's how much they believe in that particular player. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Max Crosby, but if they want to make a splash, they're going to have to do some other things. They're going to have to move some players, maybe cut a player, maybe trade a player, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of ways you can create cap space. The easiest is what the Cowboys did yesterday, which is you turn bonuses, future bonuses into signing bonuses right now. And that way you could spread it out over the length of the contract, and that creates all the space. And that's a lever you can generally use without the player's approval. That's built into the contract. So it's not like you have to give, you have to get permission. So, they've been doing that.
Caveat there, though. Sorry to cut you off. This is a great explanation, but is one of the caveats there, John, that you have to be committed to the player for the next couple of years, right? Like, for example, AJ Brown, they're not going to, would they convert an AJ Brown? He's got one of the biggest contracts on the team, but if let's just say they are thinking about trading him, does that make it more complicated to do something like that, or am I off base on that?
Well, you're definitely doing it with players you plan to keep, like the Cowboys do it with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and they do it with players. So you're not going to do it with players you might not keep. So the Eagles, Lane, they've been doing it for years with Lane. Jordan Mailata has got a big contract. DeMonte, Landon, people like that you're talking about, where you just push that lever.
How about a Jalen? Probably a Jalen Hurts restructure too, as well, right? Where they could kick.
Yeah, well, Jalen's they might have to restructure his deal in general anyway, because it's coming to that point where the guaranteed money is drying up after, I believe, this season. I don't have I have to look at his contract.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's after this season.
So that generally is the time you work out an extension, if you want to work out an extension. And I do believe the Eagles will want to work out an extension. So we'll see how that, but that's one to keep an eye on. But yeah, his is the highest contract of all. And there's about 7 Boyd years on Jalen Hurts' contract.
he's got quite a bit of them.
So, that's one. But I also think they have to do more with his contract than just convert.
Yeah, I think you think there's any trepidation there on that? I mean, I'm with you. I think they're going to extend the contract, but the way I was seeing it was, let's see this year, like Jalen is in a year to me where he's going to, if he plays like, he has the last couple of years in terms of just, being a good, competent quarterback, I think he's going to get a big deal. But if the offense falls flat this year, I could see maybe the Eagles trying to hedge their bet there. I'm not really sure how you see that. But you're right. It is a big lever to pull when it comes to contracts, which is why I think it's relevant to the salary cap conversation. How do you see that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you see some of these teams that don't have a quarter, and I get there's flaws, and people will point out the issues, and I pointed out the issues with Jalen Hurts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's constructive criticism. But for those who think he can't play, I mean, give me a break. People are talking about signing Malik Willis to $20-30 million a year just because he had a good game. And I'm one of them. If I'm in a quarterback, I'm not saying anything bad. I think he played well last year.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the quarterback market is that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, if you find a quarterback, you hold on to him. You see the Colts with Daniel Jones coming off a serious injury, essentially putting the transition tag, whichever that is, 37 million, whatever it was. And I think he's underrated. I think he was having a very good year before he got hurt. And people, same thing, the stain of the New York Giants. I think he's better than that. And I think he proved that last year. But not great. So I mean, you see some of these teams, what Miami's going through with Tua, what what Minnesota's going through, failing on McCarthy, what the Jets are constantly going through. And they gave Justin Fields $20 million last year, which was an abomination. The Cardinals moving on from Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
I mean, you do a hell of a lot worse than Jalen Hurts.
I know
So
you can, John.
I mean, for those people, you better realize this guy is one. This guy's on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah, I say that often. I mean, you can point out where you think that, because sometimes, look, the reality is, John, it can be a frustrating offense, even with all the win. And I think that's very fair to say, even for the most diehard fans. But look, the reality is, the reality has to be included in the conversation. When Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni showed up in Philly, they've gone on quite the run, and I think both of them deserve a large bit of credit for that. So well done by those guys. John, real quick, the other area I think that the Eagles can create some cap space. I've read this a lot, and you tell me what you know about it. A simple way is cutting Michael Carter. They traded for Michael Carter last year. I saw you could free up about $10 million by cutting him. He's got about $1 million left to guarantee, so that would become your dead cap hit, and I think you'd save around $9 million. That would be one way. And then the other way I read about was if you extend Jordan Davis, you can create some cap space as well there. What are some of the other ways that the Eagles can create cap? Maybe even a Jalen Carter extension would fall into that. What do you know about the Carter, Davis, the two Carters, Michael Carter and Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and some of those other moves that might create more space for the Birds?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Carter, I expect to be cut. He's the one, and you're not generating tons of cap space to make huge moves, but it will be needed cap space, and decent player. I think he could help, and maybe you can bring him back. I doubt it under a restructured deal for less money, but I'm sure it'll test the market. And yeah, Jordan Davis is, to me, the most likely of all to get extended this offseason, simply because he is, so 12 points, I'm looking it up right now, 12.938 million on the last year of his deal. So,
and it's a 5th-year option, right? So there's
it's a 5th-year option. So you never like to play under that 5th-year option if you want to keep the player, and they do want to keep the player for that reason, because the 12.938 million of salary means 12.938 million of cap space. So if you sign him to a 3-year extension, say 45 million at that 15 million a year mark, he's getting a raise. And then you could put the void years on the end. You could spread the whole thing out and you create some cap space there as well. So yeah, definitely. And Jalen Carter as well. But my concern with Jalen Carter, and maybe they have that concern. I'm concerned. He was not the same player last year, and I'm concerned. Like, I would wait on Jalen Carter. Like, I can't go. He's getting top of the market money, and I get it. Normally, it's never going down, and that's been the Eagles' philosophy. Well, it can go down if somebody's hurt. And if he's not the same player, you don't want to be tied up. So I'm going to kick the can down the road if it were me on Jalen Carter, and wait one more year, because you have time. They pick up the 5th-year option, and they have time. So I don't think
looming contracts. Do they change that decision? Like, Cooper, for example, he's just 2nd-round pick, so he's got no 5th-year option. He's getting paid next summer. And then Quinion, you could extend out, but hey, maybe they want to get ahead of that and do kind of a Devontae Smith type thing where they include the 5th-year option in the extension. Like, those are coming too. Does that maybe add some urgency to getting Carter done early? Because, John, while I do agree with you, there's maybe some hesitation with paying Carter now. I don't see a world where they get rid of Jalen Carter, so I'm probably just going to bite the bullet and take the risk at this point. I know that might not be the smart way to do it, but considering what's coming and considering I don't see a world where the Eagles actually let Jalen Carter walk, I'd probably just get the deal done. No.
Well, I kind of look at it like Cam Jurgens, and I'm like, you say to yourself, well, the medical people probably said he's fine, and he wasn't fine. Now maybe he bounces back, maybe his trip to Medellin works and everything's fine. But the guy who showed up this year was not the same guy from a physical standpoint. And he got that big deal. And, it's even going to be a bigger, much bigger deal for Jalen Carter. So, look, I'm just a little bit concerned about I think people say, well, he was hurt. He missed the games with the shoulder. He'll be fine. He was not playing well before he missed the games.
So is your concern more shoulder based or more player based or just a combination of the two?
I'm concerned. No. Well, there's a little bit of maturity stuff and all that,
right. It's kind of all goes into the pot,
but that's very, very, very small compared to he wasn't the same guy last year. He was not playing the same way. Even when he was at the start of the season, when he was healthier, he was never healthy because he came to training camp with this issue. But, and again, I think that harkens back to the year prior where he played over 1,000 snaps and, they beat the crap out of him. And is he going to be the same guy? Probably, but I want to wait and see. I want to wait and see because the guy, he didn't play well last year. Like I think, it's hard for people when you have somebody that gifted and for people that watch this show, I mean, I've been telling you, Jalen Carter is the most gifted defensive player the Eagles drafted since Reggie White. Since they've gotten since Reggie White.
It's a big statement.
That's how gifted he is. And so I'm on board that train. And as a rookie, he was close to being defensive rookie of the year. The only issue was some being able, ironically, conditioning and not playing as many snaps as they would have liked. And then the Super Bowl season, he hit that criticism out of the ballpark. Nobody played more snaps than Jalen Carter as an interior defensive lineman, and he was one of the best in football. And last year he came back and he wasn't that good. And I think it's all related to the shoulders. Both of them. It's not one, it's two. I think it's all related to that, but that's the reality. That's where we are.
Right.
And I know, the viral clip of him working out in South Jersey, he's going around, he's lifting weights. That's good because he wasn't able to lift weight. He wasn't able to lift weights last season.
Yeah, that's wild. Like that makes it tough to just differentiate, John. Like, is there concern with the player in terms of does it have to take you to a contract year in order to get your body in shape, or were the shoulders so bad that he literally couldn't do it, last year? But then I bring up the rookie year as well, where maybe that's just a rookie, but he also wasn't in shape for the end of the year that year as well. So I don't know. I mean, like you kind of saw the same thing with Jordan Davis. Like, while I'm happy Jordan Davis had a great year last year, and I think he's certainly worthy of an extension, is there any concern there on the player that it took him to the contract year, to get his body in the right shape to thrive as a player? Is there any concern there for you, or am I overstating that?
No, because he did it, and I think Jordan's gotten it, but Jordan specifically, I think, has gotten a place where he found, the way to stay in shape for him. Obviously, right. He's a big man. It's not easy for somebody who's 6'6" and 300. It's not.
You got to
easy.
keep the weight. It's not just like it's not like you can just go out there and
And so he seems to found his niche and found how to do it. And I think now that he knows how to do it, I think he's going to be fine. Same thing with Jalen Carter. Like that to me, it's not a big deal for a rookie. You got to learn to be a pro. And they gave him the constructive criticism, which is like, look, you got to get in better condition so you can play more because we need you on the field. And nobody played more. So he hit, as far as I'm concerned, when it came to conditioning, he hit a home run. And even last year, when he was not playing well, he was still playing more than anybody else on the interior.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about conditioning at all with Jalen Carter, even though it came up a couple of times because once he missed games and Vic was asked about it and said, yeah, and that was related to not playing well, So if you look and again, we use PFF because that's all we have. He's 6 of 130 as a rookie, 18 of 118 in his second season, 80 of 127 last year, 80 of 127. His run defense grade 115 of 130. He was getting pushed around because and you remember that Chicago game specifically.
Yeah, man.
He was getting pushed around and caved in because he couldn't use his shoulders.
Yeah, I never saw Jalen Carter get thrown around like he did in that game, ever.
Yeah. So look, the guy's got enormous talent. I'm hopeful that, the treatment he got, he'll be better, more of the rest than the treatment, to be honest. And he'll be better. But I'm going to wait before I dive because he's going to get paid, Chris Jones level of pay. And I don't have to do it right now. I'm not going to do it right now.
Those defensive tackles, though, John, I just I think everything you said is very relevant and real to the convo. My thing is, I don't think the Eagles are letting defensive tackles walk. Certainly ones like that. I mean, they paid Fletcher Cox. I think if I remember correctly.
Well, I don't think they're letting them walk. I'm just waiting.
Yeah, you're just waiting. That's fine. I agree. I wonder, is there a risk to the Eagles, them waiting? Not a risk, but how much does that deal go up? Like if he comes out and balls out this year, I mean, he might get 36, 37.
It'll go up a little bit, but that's a part of the reason is also because you need some space and room to do other things this year, and you don't have to do it this year. And I'm not even saying they won't do it. Maybe their doctors assure them, and they do try to do what they usually do and get ahead of the curve. I'm just saying, me personally, if you ask me, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I mean, he got drafted in 2023. So he's getting his 5th-year option. You have this year and next year. I think people forget that.
Yeah, right. You got time. You got time.
So, it's I would be a little bit cautious on that one just because of the size of the contract.
Yep, good stuff there. So that's where I think the areas are to create some cap space. John, what do you think the number that the Eagles want to get to? I know that's kind of a crazy question because it can change so quick and so easily. But just from a broad perspective with the draft and, if they did want to make a splash, how much of these moves do you think will happen for the Eagles to try and create as much cap as possible? I mean, A.J. Brown, obviously that move still lingers, which I think is the biggest one. And then we mentioned some of the extensions and some of the potential cuts. Any other players you think they could cut? And what do you think maybe would be the goal of Howie right now to get the cap situated? Is it a couple more restructures? Is there a set number? Probably not. How do you think they see it? And what's your perspective on it?
Yeah, there's no set number. That's you don't pull the levers to get to a certain number. You pull the levers to do a certain thing. So it's not like you can't go about your business and say, all right, Jalen Phillips got 30 million elsewhere. We got to pivot and we're going to trade for Max Crosby. Then you have to pivot. Then you have to pull some of the levers. Exactly. So it's not like you still go about your business and you have your contingencies. It's not about getting to a certain number. It's about having the ability to pull those levers when you need to pull those levers. Now, like I said, certain teams, Dallas most notably, 60 million over the cap. They had to pull those levers early just to get cap compliant. Eagles are not in that situation. So that's basically, if everything goes right, you know, hell, if they trade AJ Brown, they're going to have to do something. Um, you know, but if everything goes right and AJ's here and they get Jalen Phillips back, some of those levers don't have to be pulled right now. And if there's something Howie wants to do, he'll pull those levers.
John, any more levers you think they pull in terms of cutting people? I mean, you see teams dropping people like crazy. Sometimes I think they want to do that just because there's players that they've identified they don't want on the team anymore. Not all about creating cap for a certain move. Do you see any cut candidates for the Eagles? I mean, I'm seeing a lot come out every time, John. I look down at my phone, I got another notification. Some team got rid of somebody. I haven't seen anything from the Eagles yet. Do you think they cut some people? And if you do, who do you think it might be?
Well, we talked about Michael Carter's the most obvious, and he'll go. Then, there's, I guess, even though it was pretty clear that Howie said, they want to take on the hit for Jake Elliott. So I think they're going to give him another opportunity. And then, because the Eagles have drafted so well, all their high-paid players are still good. So they're not in a position. And by that, I mean, with the exception of Jake, for his position, they've all performed. So if you look at the Eagles' highest cap numbers this year, Jalen Hurts, well, people can complain. A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Jordan Davis, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Michael Carter, Saquon Barkley, Zach Bond, Jalen Carter, Cam Jurgens, Jake Elliott, Quinyon Mitchell, all the way down to Tyler Steen, Nolan Smith, Moro Jomo, Jihad Campbell, Cooper DeJean, Sidney Brown, Drew Makuba. So most of those guys are in the plans, with maybe the exception of Sidney Brown, which is lower level, and maybe you trade him, things like that. We talked about trades. Maybe Ty Robinson shows something, you trade Byron Young. Maybe you trade Kaylee Ringo if somebody wants to give up something. Players like that, lower level players, but not massive space eating cap people.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Appreciate everybody for being here today. Don't forget to hit that like button. In hour number 2, we have Devin Jackson coming up. Looking forward to talking to Devin, John. He's one of the better draft guys, and he was down at the Combine last week. So we'll have a heavy draft hour in hour number 2. I'll take some comments from the great people of JAKIB Nation. Super chats will go to the top. We are going to get into some of the NFL news from yesterday and how it might impact the Eagles coming up next here in segment number 2. Here's Worst Behavior checking in. A little compliment from me. Thank you, Worst Behavior, on a $5 super chat. They say, went back and watched Zander's first show. You've come a long way since then. Appreciate you and the show. Worst Behavior, thank you very much. Very cool of you to do that. I think that was almost 2 years ago, that first show. So thanks for going back and watching it, and thanks for supporting me up to get to this point to where the show is right now. It doesn't grow without you guys, so we do appreciate all of that. John, segment number 2 here beginning. Looking around the NFL, John, quite a bit of moves happening. We alluded to many of them in segment number 1. You spoke about the restructures of the Dallas Cowboys. They created $30 million on Dak. They created $17 million with Tyler Smith. They created $18 million with CeeDee Lamb. A massive trade, John, we didn't mention yet in the NFL yesterday. How about
that one?
Kansas City
Chiefs. Them picks. Les Snead getting back to work.
Yep, they send Trent McDuffie to the Los Angeles Rams. Listen to this haul. For a 2026 5th-round pick, a 2026 6th-round pick, a 2027 3rd-round pick, and a 2026 1st-round pick, number 29 overall. So a massive haul to the Kansas City Chiefs, and the LA Rams get a damn good cornerback, John, in Trent McDuffie. That was a massive trade yesterday. And then some more news also coming out around the NFL. This morning I mentioned Darnell Mooney was released by Atlanta, wide receiver there. I thought a couple other receivers got released. Stephon Diggs is going to be
Stephon
released as
Diggs,
well. Yeah, so a lot of movement, John, in the NFL. Your reaction? Let's start with that big trade yesterday, man. The LA Rams have been a great team in the NFC, and I think they're going for it in the brief time left they have with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, if you, the teams that win in March generally don't win in February, but if you're looking for the Rams to kick off things, and they did, talking about a 25-year-old corner who's been a two-time All-Pro, who's been a two-time Super Bowl champion. And I don't understand this one from Kansas City standpoint. This is, when you draft people, you hope that they develop like Trent McDuffie. I mean, I thought that was the goal, but I'm starting to get more and more convinced that these teams just don't want to pay anybody.
Yeah.
And would rather go, draft well and do it what the Eagles have been saying, because this one doesn't make sense to me. I don't care about 5th and 6th round picks. I don't. I mean, I know people can bring up Jordan Mailata's and something. There's always 5th and 6th round picks that hit, but come on, the average of that is very small, very small. And certainly when you compare it to first round picks, extremely small. And then you have first round picks that develop, like Trent McDuffie's developed. Now they got a first, as you mentioned, 29th overall, low because the Rams are good. And they got a 3rd round pick, I believe, in 2027. So that's a premium pick. So that's what I'm looking at. I'd rather have the proven player, but I don't know the contract situation. I don't know maybe he's unhappy. I don't know any of that stuff because I don't cover the Chiefs. But on paper, a 25-year-old two-time All-Pro corner. Yeah. Think about that with Quinyon Mitchell. If the Eagles traded Quinyon Mitchell in a couple years, that's what you're talking about.
Quinyon gets All-Pro next year, and then they trade him. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's 3 postseasons, obviously. So he's performed at a high level. He's won Super Bowls. What else do you want? I don't know. I think it's
a great trade for the Rams, dude.
I think I think it's advantage Rams.
And John, let me make a comment here, and you tell me if you think I'm way off base, because this is just a belief I have. But I'd be curious to hear if you think I'm right on it or you think I'm off. I think in general, and there's obviously nuance based on a team situation. This doesn't apply to a team that's winning 3 or 4 games and they need to build for the future. But specifically in an instance like the Rams or even the Eagles right now, teams that are close to contention, I think first round picks are vastly overrated by most teams in the NFL.
I definitely take if you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and the Rams are. I mean, a lot of things have to happen, obviously. We haven't even gotten to free agency in the draft, but here they just added an All-Pro level player. And they were one of the best teams last year. I think the most well-rounded team, and they couldn't finish it. So they're a legit Super Bowl. I'm with you 100%. Do I want the 29th pick?
Yeah. I mean, what is that going to do for me contending for a Super Bowl this year versus Trent McDuffie?
And he's 25 years old.
Yeah, that's a damn good trade for the Rams, man. That's a really good trade for the Rams.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I'm legit, look, and if I stink, it's the opposite. I don't want Trent McDuffie if I stink.
Right, that's where the first round picks are the most valuable. Right.
And but I always say, you got to be honest with yourself. And I'm saying even if it's really difficult to be honest with yourself in life, not only for NFL teams, but for NFL teams, it's really difficult to be honest with yourself. And for some reason, and I'm saying, say you made a trade, because normally 29, 30, 31, 32, those are the good teams, the teams that have made significant runs toward the Super Bowl, including the Super Bowl champions. But say you made a trade previously and you're down there for some reason, but you're a bad team. because you made a bad decision and you gave a good pick to a good team and you're down there. You got to be honest with yourself and say, look, I'd still rather have the first round pick because I stink. Trent McDuffie's not going to help me that much.
That makes sense. Yep.
Similar to, Saquon Barkley and the Giants. I mean, I don't think that was a bad decision by the Giants. I think I'm the only person in the world.
I agree with you. So you're not the only person, but me and you might be the only two.
He wasn't going to help them. And, he went to a team that was ready to win the Super Bowl and he had a historic season. It's a bad PR move. But from a football perspective, what is Saquon Barkley going to do for the New York Giants? You just watched it for 6 years.
Right.
So that to me is the toughest thing to do. And, Kansas City's obviously, fell off for the first time in a long time. They're kind of good. If they make a bunch of decisions, maybe they go in a negative direction, but they still have Patrick Mahomes. So you think that if they make good decisions.
Big injury from Mahomes last year. Yeah, curious to see how he bounces back.
But I'm sure they still think of themselves as a contender. So I don't like that move from Brett Beach and the Chiefs.
Yeah, big move there. John, and remember the Rams also have, I believe, a top 14 pick, top 13 pick. I think they have like the 12th overall pick from the Falcons last year, don't they?
Yeah, the Rams are going to be a problem.
Dude, that's a good front office in LA.
Oh yeah. Les Snead's very good. If you talk about GMs, you talk about Howie, you talk about John Snyder, who just won the Super Bowl, you talk about Les Snead. Those are probably your top three.
I agree. Those are three. So the good move by the Rams yesterday. John, how much do you think that changes them in terms of a Super Bowl contender this year? I mean, I think they're in the conversation, and I think that maybe even solidifies it a little bit more because, one of their weaknesses was their secondary, was their cornerbacks. And, well, they just got a pretty damn good one, John, a two-time All-Pro at 25 years old. Now, I do think did Trent get injured last year? He's coming off an injury. Is that right? I know he got an injury recently. I thought he had a big injury. Let me see if I could double check that for everybody. So I don't want to be wrong here. But I did think Trent had a knee injury.
Yeah, he did have a knee injury. I don't know how significant it was.
He had a hyperextension in week 14 against the Texans in December of 25. And that put him on season-ending injury reserved near the end of December there, December 24th.
Yeah, and that sounds worse than it, Yeah, it's not like an ACL or it's not like he tore his ACL as LCL.
Right, a little bit of time.
He should be fine. So that shouldn't be an issue. And again, he's especially at 25, it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, injuries are always a thing in the NFL, but that's baked into it. I mean, I don't know how much you can do about that. But hyperextension is certainly not something you would think would be a long-term issue.
John, some other NFL news I want to talk about. We'll get to Darnell Mooney. I think he's less relevant. Let's talk real quick on Stephon Diggs. And the reason I think that's so relevant is because the Patriots have been one of the teams that have been linked to A.J. Brown for, the better part of the last year and a half. Really, even in the offseason after the Super Bowl last year, there was a bunch of that talk. And it continues. I saw one Patriots fan post on social media, not that it means a whole lot, but shows you the state of Patriots fans. They said, man, now any move that's not A.J. Brown feels like a total letdown. I'm like, you better reset.
I saw the Patriots athletic writer, the guy who covers them for the Athletic, so a little bit more, substance than a fan, say he'd rather have Alec Pierce than A.J. Brown. I'm like, come on, where are we?
And see, it's funny because that's the guy I saw the fan post that if we sign Alec Pierce and don't get A.J. Brown, that's going to be a massive letdown. So we'll see. But, John, the news on Stephon Diggs, again, another example of how quick the NFL can move. I remember, 6 months ago when Stephon Diggs was doing a post-game interview with Pam Oliver or somebody on the sideline, and they're giving, what a great story. You come back, you beat the Bills, your former team, all this great hype and hoopla, and boom. this offseason, he's out of there, Johnny Mac. What do you make of it? And how do you think it changes the potential market for A.J. Brown with more receivers hitting the market potentially? And then maybe even a team like the Patriots who are linked to A.J., are they in more of a desperation mode to grab a wide receiver and maybe even spend more for it?
Well, this was always going to happen. I mean, so it wasn't like a surprise.
Right.
Stefan's 32, maybe 33. I mean, he's nearing the end of a spectacular career. One of the best route runners I've ever seen in my life. Just phenomenal. Great players. Also had some issues off the field, high profile issues, so that probably factored into it as well. So I mean, they were always going to move on. So I don't think it changes the philosophy other than they want AJ Brown. And we've been talking about this forever. What's going on with the Eagles? You know, the more this goes on, and I hope it's over, but it's not even necessarily over, by the way, if it doesn't happen March 9th to the 11th. I mean, Howie could take this thing up to the draft. He could take it up to the trade deadline. So I hope he finishes up and makes it very, very clear. But, you know, what I was thinking about yesterday, all these trades and all these talks and becoming more substantive because I got first round and premium pick. And now it turns out it's going to be first and top 100 pick. I've heard, you heard the Quinn and Williams thing. Which would be a first, a second, and a player, which is astronomical.
That sounds like a classic negotiating tactic, John.
Yeah.
Set the bar high and then allow yourself to come down.
I mean, how he's doing it, and Jimmy Sexton was out in Indy, gauging, others' interest in AJ. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke to this. To the point that the fires just started. This isn't just Howie listening to calls. I'm sorry. This is more than that. So we'll see how it ends up. But
can you elaborate on that? What do you mean more than that? More than listening to calls?
Well, how he described it, how he's been consistent of it's my job to take phone calls. He's not fucking taking phone calls on everybody. I mean, that's bullshit. That part of it's bullshit. Not taking phone calls on Jalen Hurts or Lane Johnson or Jordan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or AJ Brown last year. Well, I shouldn't say last year, 2 years ago. No, there's more to it than that. And obviously he wants to get as much as humanly possible, but the thought that they're not going to trade him unless they're bowled over and they wouldn't even consider it, that part of it's bullshit. That part of it's bullshit.
You think it's a real, like, what do you think of, the idea that for AJ Brown, is that a leverage play or is that a real ask for Howie, that type of return?
Well, it depends which one is, a future first
Quinn
round.
and Williams type haul. Specifically that phrasing.
That's probably the unserious one that the Patriots were talking about. That's not realistic. And can he get a 1 and a premium pick? Yeah, maybe late first round. The Rams were one of the teams that, even though they have great receivers, Devontae's getting older, and that's the 29th pick, so that leaves them out. The Patriots are the obvious example. They would be 31. So there's not a lot of avenues, and there's probably not a lot of teams that AJ wants to play for. So it becomes more difficult because you're dealing with a small group of teams. So it's not easy. But the idea that we wouldn't even consider that's not true. That's obviously not true. To me, it's obviously not true. There's way too much smoke to be like, there's smoke? No. there's active negotiations.
Well, you know what they say, John, where there's smoke, there's fire, and that fire appears to be brewing a little bit. We will see. I will say this to everybody. I know there's a lot of people out there who are just like on the trade, AJ. I'd be careful what you wish for, man. I mean, I reference how successful this team has been in the last 4 or 5 years since AJ Brown or since Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni got here. Well, add AJ Brown to that mix, guys, and he's been a big part of this team's success. And I don't think you replace a guy as easy as some people think you do, John. And I'm not saying there's no world you trade him. I'm just saying I think Howie's right to set the bar high in terms of a return, man. You already have an offense that's struggling. You already have a passing game that's subpar, to say the least. You want to get rid of A.J. Brown and think you're going to sit here and contend for a Super Bowl? I don't know. I'm not so sold on that, John. I'm still kind of on the team keep A.J. Brown train, my friend.
I'm in the team. A.J.'s got nothing to do with the offense toggling to great, or when you have the quarterback capable of getting the big time receiver like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all the names, Jackson Smith and Jigma now. Like they can't do it without the quarterback. They can't do it without the quarterback. Doesn't matter how good you are. Jefferson proved that last year. Doesn't matter how fucking good you are. You can get 1,000 yards like AJ did if you're that good. So did Jefferson, astonishingly enough. But you can't go into Smith and Jigba category, 17, Puka category. Like, DeMonte's great. AJ's great. I say it all the time. AJ is the best receiver. I said it yesterday and I'll say it today. Yeah. I don't give a shit about T.O. I don't give a shit about anybody in the Hall of Fame. AJ Brown is the best receiver in Eagles history. Granted, short shelf life.
It just sounded funny coming out. I don't give a shit about anybody in the Hall of Fame. Well, no, I have to agree with you.
I'm not trying to disparage Tommy McDonald.
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, especially with the way athletes have progressed, in the last, decade and even longer than that, 50 years. AJ is a rare athlete for sure and a rare player.
And I'm not saying they don't have a bigger imprint on the team's history because they were around for a long time. I'm not talking about it, but I said it to Jody. I remember saying it to Jody that A.J. Brown, before they played one game, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith were the best duo of receivers the Eagles have ever had.
John, I specifically remember cutting that clip.
They are. Obviously longevity determines where they'll be in the franchise's history, but you've now seen it. This is the best receiver the Eagles have ever had. And if it ends at 4 years, what are we at? 4 years? If it ends at 4 years, enjoy those 4 years because it doesn't matter how you replace them. It's very unlikely you're going to have that level of success for 4 years. But, the bottom line is this is not a high volume passing offense. Never was, even in the up years. Won't be. We get back to our Jalen Hurts discussion, not a high volume thrower, not an insult. What part of the problem we're talking about? He's a unique player. How many times have I used that word? You either embrace it and build around it, or if you don't like it, then go in a different direction. I personally think they should embrace it and build around it because the quarterback is more important than a wide receiver. It's just the nature of football. It's more important than everything.
You say he's the best receiver in Eagle history. I agree, but how do you reason with T.O.? I mean, is it just because it's 1 year, or do you think AJ is actually a more talented player than T.O.? Because I don't know. I watch T.O. and I go back and watch. That dude was a fucking beast, John.
He was a beast, but he was He's also a head case. He also dropped the football a ton. You know, he's a big play guy. So I've never put T.O. in the Jerry Rice. Some people put him in the Jerry Rice, Randy Moss category. I don't. You know, those guys were consistent. You know, they didn't drop the fucking football. Now, everybody drops it occasionally. The guy was a phenomenal player, but, you know, it was big plays. And, you know, he was a dominant man amongst boys type of player. But AJ's much more well-rounded, I would say.
It's hard for me to believe, man. But all right. Interesting comment there. Johnny Mack, we'll see what ends up happening with A.J. Brown and this Eagles team. What do you make of some of the other receivers, John, that have hit the market? I mean, I think even if you kept A.J. Brown, well, Jahan Dotson's on the way out. You think they feel good about Cooper being a 3, or would they look at, maybe somebody else in the open market, a trade? How do you see him handling? Maybe it's a 3rd or 4th or 5th round wide receiver. What do you think they do there? And does a name like Darnell Mooney or any of these other guys that are coming to the market, does it change the overall receiver market because the Eagles are in it? So it's I'm not saying they're going to go and get Darnell Mooney, but I'm saying if there's more options available, that changes what teams can do, which changes, how much.
And by the way, real quick, to prove my point here, 17 drops in 2006 led the NFL, 13 in 2000, 10 in 2001, 11 in 2003, 10 in 2007, 10 in 2008.
It's a lot of drops. We crushed AJ last year for what, 3 or 4? Big moment drops, though.
A lot of drops. And the catch too, his famous game where he won the game, the catch, the San Francisco. He had 4 drops in that game, but he won the game. Yeah, there's a lot of revisionist history in the world. A lot of revisionist history.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a shitload of drops. Chris Carter could play for 600 years and never drop.
That's pretty. That's pretty funny, J-Mac. J-Mac, one thing I love about you, brother, is you say it and you back up what you say. People don't have to agree, but I appreciate the opinion. John, a couple super chats we'll get to here, close up this conversation, and we have Devin Jackson coming up. Looking forward to talking to Devin Jackson. He was at the Combine, and he's great on the NFL draft, so looking forward to talking to him. Here's Ramir. He checks in. What's up, Ramir? Good to see you, brother. Appreciate you being here. KC don't care. They develop cornerbacks, then trade them. Well, clearly they don't do. They just got rid of a 2-time All-Pro. 25.
Well, and they traded Snead to Tennessee, which again, like if Tennessee's such a bad team, that's a different conversation to me. But yeah, they have too much confidence in themselves. Like, when you say things like that, we develop corners. That's ego.
What's the old phrase? The NFL is a way of humbling you.
Yes, that's ego. You happen to get.
Well, the Eagles have a little bit of that too, don't they? I mean, you referenced that with Jalen Hurts earlier, which I thought was a very good point. Like, you're like, guys, I know some of you think there's Jalen isn't perfect, which no quarterback is, and I understand that you point out some of the deficiencies, but look around the league, man. It can get a lot worse than Jalen Hurts, which I agree with. But my one question back to you would be, does the Eagles' ego, and what's the word you always use? The hubris?
Hubris.
Hubris.
Well, same thing with the
way where they're like, well, they went from Wentz to Hurts and had no problem. Most other teams can't do that. I wonder if the Eagles have that kind of ego where they're like, it doesn't matter who comes and goes. We're going to make it work. We're going to figure out how to get the players. We're going to get to contention. In some ways, they'd be right. They've been a pretty damn good franchise the last 10 years. So I wonder that.
Yeah, I mean, with them in the draft, I mean, they've had such a good draft rates over the past, since 2021, basically, with premium picks. Yeah, they definitely are in that category. The Chiefs have had so much success. They're in that category. But it will humble you. It's coming. It will humble you. Totally. And the idea, we develop cornerbacks. like I love that. I'm not picking on because everybody does it, and it's not just the Chiefs. Well, you just brought it up with the Eagles, the Packers with quarterbacks. Well, we develop quarterbacks. Howie regrets calling themselves the quarterback factory. You know, you couldn't develop Kyle McCord. You can't just develop anybody. You got to have a nice piece of clay. I'll tell you that. For any development, you will never hear me defer from players first. So for all these egomaniacs, that personnel guys and coaches, we developed this, we developed that. Yeah. And to the credit, the guys who do develop, like Stout would tell, Stout gives all the credit to the players, man. Vic gives all the credit to the players. The guys who have tremendous success, they tend to be the most well-grounded. The guys who aren't doing it, they're on the field doing it every day, trying to develop these players. And there's a lot of failures along with there's always more failures than there are successes. People just forget the failures. They tend to be the most humble. The guys are actually developing the players. Then the guys up top, they're like, yeah, we do this, we do that. You better get a nice piece of clay to develop. I'll say that.
No doubt about it. Here's another super chat here from Brian Pumper. What's up, Pump? He says the JC topic and now the TO slander. SMH J-Mac. Brian Pumper is disappointed in you. Do better tomorrow. And Zander, you're guilty by association, sir.
You're just you don't come on. I just gave you the numbers, Pumper. Give me another receiver that's even close that you think is a big time receiver that is even close to those drops. I didn't make them up. You can look it up. It's Google. It's free for everybody. Look it up. You have the Pumper eyes. You think this guy is what you think he is. 17 drops. There's no receiver in pro football that has 17 drops in the current modern environment. Guy was a phenomenal athlete, big player, made some big plays in big situations, dropped the football a ton. The slander is to put him in the same category as Jerry Rice and Randy Moss, who are the two best receivers of all time. 1, 2. Jerry's 1. Randy's 2. He shouldn't even be in that conversation. Randy, I know because I covered him. And the 6 years I covered him, he didn't drop the ball 17 times in 6 years. Not even close. Get out of here, Pumper.
See ya, Pump. Johnny Mack hits the eject button on Brian Pump. Pump, you better have a response to that, my guy. Here's Ramir. They don't have that ego. Tried to trade Hurts twice. I don't think that's true. Oh, well, back after his rookie year or his first year starting. Yeah, that was a different time, though.
When did they try to trade Hurts?
I guess, well, I
tried to upgrade.
Yeah, that's I guess.
They didn't try to trade him. They haven't tried to trade him once.
No, yeah. I think he's more, I guess he's talking about Watson and Wilson, I would assume.
Yeah, that's not a trading Hurts.
Yeah, all right. Come on, Ramir, get it right.
Yeah. To my knowledge, there's never been one trade discussion with Jalen Hurts.
Here is Pin 9617. What's up, Pin? AJ better than TO. No freaking way.
Get out of your emotion.
AJ, wait, let me read it. And then you can rip them.
Oh, my
AJ
Lord.
Better than TO. No freaking way. You're full of crap, J-Mac.
TO
is in the hall for a reason. What about AJ's drops last season?
So is Harold and so is Tommy. AJ, yeah, when AJ drops it 17 times in a season, believe me, I'll rip him. Believe me, I'll rip him.
I don't know if AJ Brown has 17 drops in the last 4 years.
No, I doubt it. I mean, you guys, do the research yourself if you don't believe me. You just believe what you hear. And you built up this legacy in your mind. And I'm not saying the guy's not a Hall of Famer. He is. I'm not saying he's not a great player. I'm saying he had flaws. And AJ's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. You know, you know.
AJ has 28 drops in his career. The most he ever had in a season was 8 in 21 and 7 in 23.
And that, by the way, that's too many. That's too many, by the way.
Yeah, but the other years are 2, 5, 5, 0, and 1.
Yeah, I mean, season. 8 and 7 is not good. 17 is absurd. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I'd
probably say, John, I still think T.O. is better, but I don't think your point is as off as people are making it out today.
Well, I'll tell you, AJ in a low volume offense, as opposed to T.O., who was playing with some damn good quarterbacks. In case you didn't realize, had 2 seasons greater than yardage wise than T.O. ever had in his entire career. His first 2 seasons with the Eagles, 1496 and 1456, are higher than T.O.'s biggest season. Now, different games, different era, all that. But I mean, yeah, he is way ahead. Through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons, AJ Brown is way ahead of where T.O. was through 7 seasons. Way ahead. I mean, way ahead. But by all means, look it up.
So if all things were equal, John, quarterback, both in the prime of their careers, would you, and you had 1 game to win, you would take AJ Brown over Terrell Owens?
Well, I mean, that to me is not relevant. That to me is like the LeBron conversation. Like I want the well-rounded guy. I always go with the well-rounded guy.
Because you're looking at it as more of a longer timeline.
Yeah.
That's why you don't like
I'm not trying to win 1 game. I'm trying to win.
Well, how about 1 season? You got 1 season.
I think T.O. is the best receiver the Philadelphia Eagles have ever had.
AJ.
Yeah. Sorry, I said T.O. I think AJ Brown is the best receiver the Eagles have ever had. And this guy was here for essentially 1 year. And I get it, because they had watched garbage it's ironic because they had watched garbage at receiver for so long before the Eagles got T.O. And then they made the Super Bowl. He had 1,200 yards that season. He had a bunch of touchdowns. And then obviously went off the reservation. But ironically, the James Thrashes of the world that everybody makes fun of, they were freaking better than the garbage they had before AJ and Devontae got here. They couldn't find a damn receiver. They're playing Travis Fulgham. Like, I don't know if people get caught up in the history and the lore and all that bullshit. There is no. This shouldn't even be a conversation.
Wow. That AJ's better than T.O. shouldn't even be a conversation.
And Philadelphia history, yes.
Oh, Philadelphia, I have no problem with that because AJ's got 4 years here, multiple. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, T.O. was here for a cup of coffee. He was here for a year. I mean, I agree with that. But I think people are hearing your argument as an overall player. AJ's better, and I think that should be. I don't know that that's as clear cut.
Well, that most people aren't going to agree with me because they've been clouded by revision and this larger than life personality that ignores it's what I got. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 drop seasons. 6.
Yeah, but I know. But are you? Look. I understand that was a part of his game. But John, I mean, I can also hit you with this: 15 years, 15,934 receiving yards, good for 3rd all time, 153 touchdowns, 6 Pro Bowls, and 5 All Pros. it's in a way, it's selective stats. I get it. The drops are a thing, but that's not the only thing. I mean, he was extremely.
He played. When you talk about high level of numbers and best baseball, he played 15 seasons.
That's a long time.
If AJ Brown plays 15 seasons, his numbers will dwarf T.O.'s. He's got AJ's played
7 seasons.
7 seasons. He's got 6 1,000-yard seasons. The only reason he's not 7 for 7 is because he missed 4 games in 2021. In his entire 15 years, T.O. has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You really think
it was kind of a different era? I mean, there wasn't.
Well, it was, and that's fair to point out as well. It is more of although over the past 2 years now, the defense seems to be catching up in the offense.
Yeah, it does.
But no, that's fair for most of it. And I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Fame player. He's a Hall of Fame player. I really get angry when people compare him to Jerry and Randy. Don't even put him in that fucking conversation.
I'll tell you where AJ Brown's not catching T.O., John. He ain't catching the touchdowns. 153 freaking touchdowns. There's a lot of touchdowns, dude. I don't think AJ. I'd have to look what AJ's at. What's he at in his career? He's at
AJ's got
56.
56.
Yeah, so he's not touching that.
Yeah.
But the yards, you're right. I mean, 7 years, AJ has 8,029 yards in 15 years, which is 8 more seasons. T.O. had 16,000. So you're right, actually. AJ's on a
oh yeah, and his first, people don't know, like T.O. was a backup early in his career. He didn't have his first 1,000-yard season till his 3rd year. He didn't have his first 1,400-yard season till his 5th year. Because San Francisco was pretty stinking good at the time. Not the quarterbacks in San Francisco. But look, the people that think T.O. is a better Eagle than AJ Brown, I mean, that's absurd. He had 1 season here. He had a great season. He played through an injury. He played great in the Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl. I got news for you. AJ's been to 2 fucking Super Bowls. They won one of them. I mean, what are you talking about?
This will get him going, John. Ramir says 17 drops and still get talked about as a top 10. LOL. Yeah, well, that's for sure. Ramir says if Russ and Watson said yes, Hurts wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's true. However, they weren't trading it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I've told people the truth about that for years. You got all the delicate baby ear people that think the Eagles weren't trying to convince Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson to consider them. They were. And the whole philosophy that year is if they could hit a home run, and as laughable as it seems now because of what is going on with Deshaun Watson. And again, I'm not going to play revisionist history with you. Everybody wanted Deshaun Watson at that time. So the bullshit afterwards. And Russell Wilson, the Eagles have always wanted him since they missed out on him in the draft. He was their white whale. And it would have been a mistake if they went that. But they were trying to go in that direction. And their philosophy at the time was they didn't want a minimal upgrade because they thought at that point after 2021, Jalen Hurts, they were comfortable building around and seeing what they had if they couldn't hit a home run, what they considered a home run.
Right. So it was home run or bust.
Yeah. They considered Deshaun and Russell Wilson as potential home runs.
Which you often say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that would have worked out as well as Hurts has worked out. So good stuff there. We got Devin Jackson coming up in a couple minutes. Couple more chats here. Motorscape. What's up, Gary? Good to see you, brother. Prime T.O. playing in today's game would look like DK Metcalf. That's going to –
Well, T.O. is phenomenal. Physical specimen, just phenomenal. You're not going to hear me criticize him as far as that.
Oh yeah, he just.
But the players today, AJ's not bad himself. In case you haven't looked.
Yeah, but he's not as physically imposed, dude. T.O. was he used his physical, his frame better than AJ, I think.
I don't, maybe. He's here's the problem. There's like a bunch of you look at guys now, and there's a bunch of these monsters. Back then, like it was T.O. and there were no other monsters.
Right.
Now there's a bunch of monsters. So it doesn't stand out. I mean, AJ, just if you listed, T.O.'s was 6'3", 224. AJ's shorter, 6'1", 226. He's actually weighs more. AJ's ripped.
Yeah. I mean, no, he is. There's no doubt. So Gary followed up. He said that was more of a comparison that he'd stack up to more like DK in terms of presence. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. Good stuff.
And by the way, AJ's better than DK as well.
John, good job today. You got the people going. I imagine they're going to be going once I post that clip up too. So we'll see what.
I know I'm taking heat for that one. I know.
Well, listen, you got an
opinion. But again, my biggest TO take is do not compare him to Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. Now, by the way, that's not an insult. Those are, in my opinion, the two best receivers of all time.
Agreed.
Like if you're lower than those guys, it's not an insult. Many people will take that as an insult. But
they ain't dropping. Where's Calvin fit? 3?
Calvin would be 3 to me. Yes. Randy Moss, like I said, Jerry Rice ain't dropping the ball 17 times in a season. They ain't. Never happened. Never would happen. They could play. Jerry played till he was 40, whatever. That's a lot of freaking drops.
Yeah, it is. Good point. John, you got an opinion? You stand on it. That's why we love you. We appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. We got the great Devin Jackson in the green room. He's going to join us right now here on Birds 365. Read all his work at the Inquirer. He's done a great job covering and leading into the draft each year. Devin, great job down at the Combine, man. We appreciate you joining in today on a Thursday edition of Birds 365. How you doing, Devin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on and talking NFL draft. And Combine as always was a blast to be there and be able to catch up with prospects and catch up with other people in the industry. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk to maybe Eagles draft plans and NFL draft prospects.
Yeah, good to have you back. Devin did a great job out at the Combine. I guess I'll start because the most obvious sort of position, I guess maybe the Eagles will be looking at it at 23 is offensive tackle. And I saw when you're out there, it seemed like the Eagles talked to every offensive tackle they could. So obviously they're very interested in doing their due diligence at that position. What do you think changed? I mean, the thing that stuck out to me, especially coming off the playoffs with Will Campbell and his struggles, which, people look at arm length and all of a sudden Spencer Banner's been that type of guy who's been a top 10 pick, and all of a sudden he's got small arms and short arms. And how much do you think that changes things? Does it change things, or is that kind of stuff overrated?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think some people will overcorrect a little bit, maybe in terms of arm length, and but I think in terms of offensive line, wingspan probably is the more accurate thing to look at, because you got to be able to match some of what these edge rushers in the NFL are bringing in terms of athleticism and arm length and wingspan that they bring. But yeah, I think Fano, I think more so the conversation around him is, we know what he can do at tackle, but teams are interested at guard, interested in center. He was taking center snaps, after he did the combine, did the combine workout, and teams are interested in that department. And then you see teams like the Lions and Bears, they move on from their centers and now they're in the market for centers. So I think for Fano, it's more about his versatility and his ability to potentially play all 5 spots on the offensive line. Maui Noah, Francis Mauigoa from Miami, kind of the same discussion. But yeah, I think coming out of the combine, I think they're guys that, have more of the prototypical type of tackle, athleticism wise, size wise. I feel like those guys are coming out of the combine looking a little better than maybe a Fano or Maui Noah. But I think both Fano and Maui Noah are guys that, probably going to be in the top 10, top 15 picks. And I'll be surprised if they make it, anything past that. But, in terms of the other tackles, Monroe Freeling, I feel like, from Georgia, he's a guy that coming out of the combine, everyone seemed to have a lot of buzz about. He only has 16 career starts, but, he's a guy that, I think coming out of it, probably is going to be a top 10, top 15 pick, just because, guys like that, his size, his athleticism, I think he ran like a 4.9 340, at the combine, freakish athleticism. I know he struggled a little bit in the on-field drills, but in terms of what you're looking for and prototypical left tackle, he checks all those boxes. So coming out of the combine, I think those three guys, Maui Noah, Fano, and Freeling, are guys that maybe are going to go a little bit higher than even we expect. But when the next tier of offensive linemen or tackles, I think Vanga Ioane from Penn State, he's probably up there in terms of being taken inside the top 20. But then after that, I think it's kind of a crapshoot, and I think that's kind of what works in the Eagles' favor. And you have a guy like Caden Proctor from Alabama, Blake Miller from Clemson, Maxie Honachor from Arizona State. Those guys, I feel like, are all going to be in the range for the Eagles to take at 23.
We just a real quick follow up on that, Devin. We all think there's going to be at least a little shift in how the Eagles evaluate offensive linemen moving to this outside zone stretch scheme, which is sort of lateral before you as opposed to the more physical get up the field vertical Jeff Stoutland approach. Guys like Freeling, guys like Miller, are those the athletes that maybe they might gear towards? Is it fair to say they're a little bit more athletic and maybe they went to more of the power prospect in the past, or did you not get that feel out there?
Yeah, I think they would certainly, match exactly what you're looking for in terms of the movement ability. I think Freeling specifically is a guy that, at Georgia, he was asked to do block a lot in space, pull out in space and, block on screens and all those different things. So Freeling specifically, I feel like, is a guy that has a lot of experience already doing so in the Georgia system. Miller, I think, is kind of in that similar vein where, they asked him to do a lot in space too. So I could see both of those guys kind of match, if you decide to go more of the outside zone scheme, route in terms of run scheme. I think they make a lot of sense. But I also think both those guys are tackle only prospects too. I don't think they're guys that you can necessarily move in the interior or can play guard at the NFL level. So I think that would be kind of the caveat with those two players.
Devin, we had Ian Cummings on earlier this week, another great draft guy. He explained the draft as kind of a bell curve in that he felt like the most of the value was kind of in those middle rounds. And there's a lot of, while there might not be as many blue chips this year, there is a lot of great starters. Would you agree with that? And how do you kind of see the overall board for the Eagles and or just NFL in general, and where teams can kind of get the most value out of the draft this year?
Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of value on day 2 of the draft, just because I feel like you're gonna. I think in the top 10, top 15 picks, there's kind of a set amount of players you kind of expect to go in that range. But I think it's going to get interesting coming out of the combine. Obviously because one, I think it depends on when does Ty Simpson, QB2, when does he go? Does he go in the first round? Does he go like middle first round, late first round? I think that will be a big determining factor, because if he does end up going like the middle or late first round, then you're going to have a bunch of players that probably shouldn't be there that are going to be on the board. Just because the quarterbacks got pushed up just a tiny bit in terms of like Mendoza's going to go number 1, but then Simpson, the question of where he goes, I think is going to make kind of an interesting debate. But yeah, then after that, I think when you look at in terms of the depth of, the defensive line class, the depth of the cornerback class, the safety class, those three positions specifically, have a lot of really strong and talented players that can come in and start, even if they're taken in round 2 or round 3. Then you go to other positions like tight end is a little bit more backloaded. Bianchi and Sadiq going in the first round. Eli Stowers for Vanderbilt had a really strong testing day, and maybe he goes a little bit earlier than we expect. Probably not first round, but maybe sometime early in round 2. But I think after him, you get a little bucket of players that are potential stars or potential role players, and then the receiver class is always going to be strong. They're always going to have a lot of depth in a receiver class, and especially on day 2. I think maybe you get 5 or 6 receivers going round 1, but after that you can maybe get in the double digits wide receiver on day 2. So yeah, I would agree that this class you're going to have your set amount, maybe 10, 15 guys that seem to always pop up in first round mocks, but really after I think you get out of the top half of the draft, it gets a little interesting. It depends on what people are preferring or teams are preferring in terms of who might go next. But after round 1 finishes, there's a chance that guys, people expect to go on round 1 or there and on day 2. And all of a sudden you have a big run of really talented players that probably shouldn't have been there, end up being there. So yeah, I think this is the type of draft where the premium positions aren't as strong at the top, and some non-premium positions like linebacker and safety, and obviously the tight end and King and Sadiq. You're going to see a little bit of a different type of draft, I think, than years past.
Devin, a position we haven't talked about that much here, and I want to kind of pick your brain on it, the D-backs, from the standpoint of, I think we all kind of assume the Eagles are going to, because of what they've done recently, is just draft defense, premium picks. It's going to shift a little bit toward the offense, and I do think that will happen. But, when you start projecting the Eagles need help at cornerback 2, they could potentially need help at safety if Reed Blankenship leaves in free agency. Seemed like from your work out there, they were looking at a bunch of prospects maybe in that range, that mid-round range. Anybody stand out to you that could be a fit that maybe have some upside?
Yeah, for cornerback, I was just finishing watching Julian Neal from Arkansas last night, and I think he matches a lot of what the Eagles are looking for in corner. He's some nice length, ability to close on the football and zone and man coverages. Challenges receivers at the line of scrimmage. Does a really nice job, breaking up passes at the catch point, and he ran pretty well too for a guy that I think it was like 6'2" in the 200-pound area. Ran like a 4.49 40. Tested really well in explosive jumps. I think he has 7.19 or 7.13 3-cone and like a 4.2 20-yard dash. So guy that has a pretty decent change of direction for a guy his size. But he checks a lot of the boxes, I think, that the Eagles are looking for in terms of maybe like a day 2 corner. So I think his range is more so in the round 3 areas. So maybe one of the 2 third rounders that the Eagles have, he will make a lot of sense. But yeah, I really like his game, what he brings to the table. And then when you look at day 2 in general, I think it just kind of depends on who's there, who's not, in terms of the cornerback class. I think because of the need for cornerback stars across the NFL, you're going to see a lot of guys just kind of fly off the board a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if in round 1 do the Eagles end up with another Jahad Campbell case, and if a guy like Jamar McCoy is falling, a guy that a lot of people are expecting to go in the top 10, top 15. Does he intrigue the Eagles if the Eagles decide to maybe trade back and he's still there? So I think it's going to be kind of a watch and see process for the Eagles. Obviously, I know they met with Avion Terrell, but he's probably going to be out of their range after what he did at the combine and just what people feel about him around the league. But I keep an eye on a guy like Jermon McCoy from Tennessee that expected to go in the top 10, top 15 pretty much the entire cycle. Doesn't go and test at the combine, waiting for his pro day. He's been out for a full year. I think he's a guy to me that, the Eagles are always looking for guys that maybe, other teams aren't valuing as high. And, say if all the offensive linemen that they want, in round one are gone, do you decide to take a guy like McCoy that, clearly has a lot of talent, clearly is viewed highly in the league, but, the big question marks if he's still the same explosive player he was pre-injury.
Going to be interesting to see. Devin, tight end, man. I think it's interesting. The Eagles right now, they got really nobody under contract. They got a couple lower level guys that could be depth pieces. But if Goddard walks, the Eagles are going to be in a position here where they got to get some tight ends. Now, I know you mentioned Kenyon Sadiq in round one. I don't really think the Eagles would go that route. Where's the value for them in 2, 3, 4? Who do you like tight ends in that area where the Eagles could try and pick up some guys?
Yeah, I think Max Clare from Ohio State, obviously is a guy that, is connected to the Eagles quite a bit, and he's extremely talented pass catcher, decent run blocker, someone that, clearly would fit more so the Goddard role where, he's coming in and immediately being that receiving threat with some potential to be a long-term blocker. So he makes a lot of sense for the Eagles. I will look at, NC State's Justin Joly, someone that I really like throughout this process. Look good at the Senior Bowl, look good on his tape. Really athletic player, more so kind of that move tight end where you're not going to ask him to do a lot of in-line things, but he's a really good receiving tight end. Has some good athleticism. Looked really good while he was down at the combine. So he would certainly make a lot of sense. And then, of course, Georgia's Oscar Delp, kind of in that same vein where, extremely athletic player. They asked him to block a ton, and he does a really nice job when he's, blocking linebackers, safeties, corners, not so much defensive ends. But again, I think he's another player that, will make a lot of sense for what the Eagles are trying to look for in terms of athleticism wise. And I think he fits more of more what they traditionally look for, in terms of that position. But I think the player that interests me the most is Nate or Berkshire, the Texas A&M tight end who, it was coached by Jamal Singleton at the Senior Bowl. A guy that has a little bit more traditional tight end skills. I think he's probably more in the third, fourth round range. But I think in terms of a guy that has some receiving outside, but mostly focus a little bit more on the blocking aspects of things. I think he will make a lot of sense to kind of be your tight end two, to kind of pair him up with probably more so a free agent type of player versus being like that true tight end one. But I like Berkshire, as a player that can come in and handle some of those blocking duties that the Eagles may be looking for from the tight end position. So to me, those guys stood out. I think if you're looking more of the blocking type, I think Will Kasmerick, the other Ohio State tight ends, probably more that Keith, straight blocking tight end. Someone that probably isn't going to go out for routes a ton, but enjoys and really relishes the blocking role. And then kind of the other position I'm looking at too is fullback. Could the Eagles be looking more into that fullback position? If they do a little bit more under center, if they do a little bit more of the Shanahan McVay type of run sets where they are asking the tight end or asking a fullback to kind of be a part of that process, and two guys that kind of fit that bill or Riley Nowakowski from Indiana and Max Bredesen from Michigan. Bredesen, I think particularly is interesting because he was listed as a tight end at Michigan, but he truly play more of that fullback role, and for Nowakowski, kind of in the same way for Indiana, kind of that utility H-back guy that can make a lot of sense at fullback. So for tight end, for me, I would look in a couple of buckets, and you have your receiving guys, your more inline blocking guys, and then I will even suggest fullback as a potential too.
Just one more at tight end I want to get your thoughts on. Then that's the kid from Stanford, Sam Roush, because I mean, I do think the Eagles are going to go more, more of that. I hate to throw out the name, but that the ceiling is you want somebody like George Kittle who can do both. But from the perspective of just being that inline tight end, and I don't know what he measured at, but certainly he was coming in. He's like 6'6", 260 or something. So big dude. Does that translate on the field, or is it not? Because sometimes you got big guys who aren't physical.
Yeah, it does translate on the field. I think he's a guy that, I think the Eagles will have circled in terms of like, this is a guy that they want, to be kind of that, developmental, can do some things as a receiver, certainly be kind of that guy. But he also is a really nasty run blocker too. He's not just, a guy that's all about receiving. And, obviously Stanford known for developing tight ends back
Yeah.
in the day and what they were able to do. It's been a little bit since that's happened, but yeah, he's a physical player. Guy that, has some good route pacing. They do a lot of insert blocks with him at Stanford, and just what he was able to do in blocking defensive linemen, defensive ends. Yeah, he would check all the boxes in terms of, guy that, isn't going to be a burner in terms of the tight end position, but if you need him to work double team blocks, to kind of insert up to linebackers, kind of wall off defensive ends, while also making some nice catches over the middle of the field. Roush probably is kind of your great mix of all those things, especially as a day two player. But yeah, I like Sam Roush a lot, and coming off of the combine where he tested extremely well for his size. He was 6'6", 267. He I believe he ran like a 4.7 40 or just under 4.7, has some good jumps. So yeah, the athleticism clearly pops with Roush, and he's a guy that I think makes a lot of sense if you are going for the combo guy where he's a really solid, strong blocker, can do some things over the middle of the field. I think Roush is probably your best bet in the middle rounds.
How about wide receiver, Devin? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with A.J. Brown, but I think they're making a pick at wide receiver somewhere anyway. Where's the value? Who do you like? A name I keep hearing that's good value, at least this was pre-combine, was Chris Bell, as maybe a good replacement for A.J. or a potential replacement. Where do you see the value at wide receiver in this draft?
Yeah, the value to me is rounds 2 and 3, just because I feel like you're gonna have your top end guys go early. Obviously you look at Cardinal Tate, Jordan Tyson, players like that, that they're probably gonna go early in the draft, and maybe the late run in those 20s to Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, Omar Cooper Jr. has been getting a lot of round 1 buzz coming out of the combine. But yeah, on day 2, I think it really depends on the type of receiver you're looking for. If you're looking for more kind of complementary guys that fit, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith's skill set. I look at guys like Clemson's Antonio Williams as a player that makes a lot of sense. Alabama's Jeremy Bernard. I think those guys are kind of have that inside out ability, can play all over the formation, has some speed, has some yards after catch ability. So I think they will make a lot of sense if you want to go that route. But if you're going like you need to replace AJ, certainly you want to do it in round 1. And I think Casey Concepcion probably makes a lot of sense to start to kind of fill that role that AJ Brown left behind, and what he's able to do. Jordan Tyson, I think, is a guy that his everything that coming out of the combine says his medicals are clean, but he has missed quite a few games over the last 2 years, and that could scare some teams off. And maybe he's a guy that's available in the 20s by the time the Eagles are picking. So I keep an eye on him if AJ is traded. But yeah, on day 2 and day 3, I'd be looking for guys that probably more complementary skill sets that aren't necessarily guys that need to demand 7-8 touches a game, but maybe 3 to 4. Have the speed to maybe take the top off the defense. So I think those guys make a lot of sense in terms of what you're looking for. Deion Burks from Oklahoma, another speedy guy that probably will play more of the slot role for the Eagles if he gets drafted there. But yeah, I would look, the third receiver. I think you want a guy that's a little bit more versatile. Obviously, that can bring some run blocking elements too, because we know that, this new system could really accentuate run blocking from receivers a little bit more. And I think Bernard and Williams kind of bring that ability.
Everybody loves quarterbacks, maybe not in this draft. You mentioned the top two. Mendoza's obviously going to go number 1 overall. Ty Simpson's probably going to go in the first round because quarterbacks get pushed up the board. There is some thought the Eagles might spin off Tanner McKee. A lot of hype about the New York Jets potentially being interested. The problem there is you need a backup. So my question to you is, I think I know the answer. I think it would be Garrett Nussmeier, but who amongst the next group is most ready to be an NFL backup right now? And then if you can't get one of those guys, who do you think is the best day 3 dart throw at the quarterback position?
Yeah, so I think when you're looking at kind of the, what you talked about and personality wise, I think that matters, in terms of like, do you have the ability to understand, like, maybe it's not your time to start at this current juncture of your career, and are you okay being able to be a backup? So I think if you're looking for a guy that kind of, 2 guys to me fit kind of that mantra, I think Carson Beck from Miami makes a lot of sense as just a backup player where, maybe the arm juice isn't there for him in terms of like, some of the other top quarterbacks in this class, but the experience is there. He played a lot of games, played in a lot of high profile games, and a player that is gone through change. Was at Georgia, then went to Miami, won a lot of games between those two. K Klubnik from Clemson, multi-year starter, a guy that comes from a program that the Eagles love to draft players from, 1. But 2, a player that's won a lot of games, that competitive, has some athleticism, has a decent strong arm. I think he will make a lot of sense too, if you're going to go the day 2 route. So I would look at Beck and Klubnik. On day 3, I mean, I think Taylor Green makes a lot of sense in terms of being a developmental guy. I think he's a couple of years away from truly being like backup ready, and in terms of ready to start an NFL game. But he has the tools to be able to develop really strong arm. Athleticism really pops. He had an awesome combine in terms of his athleticism, and just a guy that kind of way in the wings, but I don't think he'd be ready to be a backup next year. Another guy I'll shout out is Cole Payton from North Dakota State. Obviously North Dakota State, I know Eagles fans are happy to hear a quarterback from that school, but Cole Payton is only started 1 year at North Dakota State, and left-handed quarterback, extremely athletic, really strong arm, someone that can attack all areas of the field. Had a really good Senior Bowl too. So I really like him as a day 3 developmental player, where you spend some time developing him, and maybe he turns out into a really strong backup. So yeah, I will look at those guys. I know other names have been thrown around, guys like Drew Aller, obviously Garrett Nussmeier, people like that, but I think those 2 guys would be a little bit more difficult to have as a backup, just because I feel like there are guys that have talent to push as a starter, and maybe you don't want that type of personality in the room where, I won't see a threat to be a starter, but also kind of the noise around it. I think you have to be ready for that potential, especially with Nussmeier and Aller being guys that coming into the season were expected to maybe crack the first round. And maybe potential stars in the NFL. So I will probably go the latter route, where K Klubnik makes a lot of sense. Players like that, Carson Beck, Cole Payton, Taylor Green. I will shout out those guys.
Devin, sitting at 23, if you're Howie Roseman, I know this changes based on the way the board falls. You moving up, you moving down, you staying put. What's Howie doing in round 1 this year, Devin?
I think moving up. I think there's gonna be someone that is falling down the board a little bit. And I just have a feeling that Howie was going to get aggressive in trying to address a premium position. So you know I think we're also got to keep in mind what happens with Jalen Phillips and what whether he resigns or not. But if he doesn't, there's going to be a pretty decent need at edge rusher. So I think that if there's an offensive lineman, like a Spencer Fano, if he starts to slip a little bit down the board, I could see the Eagles being interested in taking him, with his, guard tackle flexibility, and he's a really good player too. So I would probably guess trade up more than trade back, just because their teams that are picking behind them also have a lot of similar needs, so I'd be a little worried of that. You look at the Bills, say if, like for instance, if AJ Brown does get traded, Bills are also looking for a receiver behind them. Browns are also looking for a receiver behind them, and if you're looking at offensive line, Browns might be looking for offensive line if they go, non-offensive line and pick number 6. Texans are going to be looking for a ton of offensive linemen. They just traded one earlier this week. So I think you have to be careful when you're trading back in the first round, because a lot of those teams are tend to have similar needs that you have. You don't want to be in a position where you pick behind them and they take the guy that you want. And just naturally, I feel like Howie gets a little more aggressive when the picks get closer to him. So I think I would expect more of a move up in the first round versus moving back.
That's definitely been Howie's recent history. Make sure you follow Devin on the X platform, real D_Jackson. Read him at Inquirer.com. Does a tremendous job there covering the NFL draft with an Eagles tint to it. You mentioned edge rushers there. You're right. You need those. You need those those backup plans if things don't go right. So we all know they want to keep Jalen Phillips, but they're going to have walk away number. If that happens, who's that guy? Who's he going up to get? Do you think? Who do you think is in that? I don't want to say top 10. I don't think they're going up that high, but if you go from 23 to say 15, who fits that category, or does anybody?
I think Keldrick Folk probably is the only guy that really fits that category, only because I feel like David Bailey and Ruben Bain are both going to be gone, in the top 7, top 8 picks. But yeah, Keldrick Folk, kind of nailing down his stock has been, kind of a difficult one, because he's a really talented run defender, only 20 years old, like 6'6", 285, has some pretty good athleticism for his size. They played him a little bit all over the formation, some 3 tech, some 4-eye, some 5 tech, coming off the edge. He clearly has a lot of juice, but he also kind of matches the first round edge rushers we've seen over the last few years, like Michael Williams, like Shamar Stewart, where they're not exactly, pass rush specialists, but they're athletic specimen. And, Howie Roseman's, motto has always been getting freakish athletic guys, especially in the first round. And, again, if he's a guy that, and really, I think there was a disconnect a little bit between the league and just, draft Twitter, draft media, that, Keldrick Folk is really, thought of like top 10, top 15 player in this class in league circles. But, who wants to take that dart on him? And if you're, trade up to 15, there's a good chance that he's there, especially, you think about, who could go early, obviously 2 linebackers in Sonny Styles and Arvo Reese. You got David Bailey and Ruben Bain. Got a receiver position that could have a couple guys go. Jeremiah Love can go. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza can go. That's like 9 players right there. There's not enough picks there. And then the DBs could go early too, especially with the Chiefs now needing a DB. Obviously, the Dolphins and Cowboys all needing a DB. All of a sudden, you get down to 13, 14, 15. There's not, Keldrick Folk still might be around there. So I think, if you're looking for an edge rusher to trade up for, in this draft class. And then Keldrick Folk, checks a lot of those boxes. Bigger defensive end. A guy that I think if the Eagles don't bring back Brandon Graham, he can play a lot of those roles that Brandon Graham played, over his career and really over the last season or so. I think Folk would make a lot of sense if you're trading up for an edge rusher.
Good stuff. Devin Jackson joining us here on Birds 365. Read all his work at the Inquirer. Devin did a great job down at the NFL Combine. You can follow him on X. It's at @RealD_Jackson. Devin, thanks for joining today, brother. We appreciate you doing it. We'll be hoping to talk to you again before the draft. Still, what do we got? 6 weeks, I think, about Devin, 6 or 7 weeks until the NFL draft. So it's ramping up. Draft season is here. We appreciate you doing it today, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zander and John. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
Joining us right here on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, great show today. Great interview there with Devin. I love draft season, John, and I love free agency season. And the new league year is now officially just about upon us, Johnny Mac, and things are really starting to ramp up for the 2026 season. John, I see people in the chat talking right now. We're going to win 7 games next year.
Wow. No, I don't agree with that.
I don't either.
Yeah, come on. There's, again, the Eagles didn't win 5 games. They may act like it, but they won 11 games.
They won 11, but they were close on a couple. I think that's
they got a lot of good players on this team. They got more good players than most teams in this league, and that's not going to change. Even if they trade AJ Brown, and even if they don't re-sign Jalen Phillips, they're still going to have more good players than most teams in this league. So you're starting from a position of strength, and then you got to make some good decisions in free agency and the draft, and then you'll talk about whether they're just a 9-10 win team or a Super Bowl contender. That'll be that. But yeah, they're not a 7-win team, barring catastrophic injuries. No way. Come on.
No, I don't see it either. John, would you make a Devin's breakdown of the draft there, man? It's going to be an interesting draft. There's always good storylines in every draft. They're all obviously not all the same. But what's sticking out about this class so far to you as we get a little closer?
Well, you're starting to hone in on where you think the Eagles are going to go, and that can change after free agency, and it will change after free agency. But, obviously they did a ton of work looking at the tackles or the tackle guard versatility guys at the Combine. I was surprised how much they looked at sort of the mid-range of defensive backs. I don't think they're going defensive back at the top. Unless something like Devin said and all the tackles are gone and things like that. Phillips changes things dramatically if they don't give him back. So I thought it was interesting, his take on Kendrick Falk, who I've heard the same thing. I think he's liked by NFL people more than I think draft Twitter has caught on to yet. And I think he's kind of a, if you're going up to 15 to get him though, or somewhere in that range, boy, that would be a bit of a. I wouldn't mind him at 23, but I don't know if I'd go up and get him. But I do think he's a possibility. Whereas you see, like Messidor probably gets more hype with draft Twitter, and I meant to ask him about Messidor, but I think he's a guy that. He's older prospect. He's a high risk prospect. He's not an Eagles guy to me. Too high risk. Whereas I think Devin hit the nail on the head. Somebody like Falk, that's what the Eagles look for, the athletic freak, and especially in the first round. They want that difference making from just a physical standpoint. But that's only in the equation if they don't get Jalen Phillips back in free agency. The one guy I've fallen in love with and I didn't get to because safety's not really all that relevant for the Eagles, even though it could be if they don't get Reed Blankenship back, but they've never taken a safety in the first round. That kid from Oregon, man. I watched some of him. I love that kid. Dylan.
Yeah, Deneman.
Deneman, yeah.
He's
I mean,
a really good player.
yeah, I think he's going to be a big time player. I don't think they take him at 23, and I do think they're going to go offense. I think they almost have to go offense, but anyway, those are some of my recent thoughts about the draft.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Couple minutes left here to go on the show. Let me make sure we got all of our super chats done. I want to thank everybody for being here today. You stirred them up a little bit today, John, with the TO talk. But we had a good draft conversation, a good cap conversation in hour number 1.
Now I'm interested. By the way, if AJ stays and everything turns out to be fine, and he's still one of you as the Eagles fans, does he all of a sudden become better? Is this support? Is this sort of setting up for is what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. It's they're loyal to only who's here. They think AJ's gone, so now they've turned on him. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Because this guy has been a big time player for 4 years, not 1 year, for 4 years, a big time player. And I guess some people would say it wasn't last year, but 3 All-Pros, 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl championship. Why are we having this discussion? Why is that even remotely controversial?
John, we will see what happens, my friend. There's a lot going on in Eagle Land. I can't believe it. We got people in the chat. I saw one saying we got 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins until they see the roster. I tell you what, I don't know what the right word is for this, John, but it feels like the ceiling and the floor this year are a lot different than what they've been before. I still think the ceiling is there, but it does feel like the floor is lower this year.
I agree with that. The floor is lower, but it's not 7 wins.
No, I
5 wins. I think it goes down to, 8 and 9 would be a catastrophe. I think that's probably your floor.
What's the least? The least in Sirianni's era is 9, right? That was year 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Jalen Rager and come on. It's just different team.
But you got a very young coaching staff who hasn't done it. You still have that defense though to lean on. Now it could go in a negative direction if you lose Jalen Phillips and Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean. But Vic's going to figure something out. I honestly, and I love Nakobe Dean, but I think Jihad's going to be a better player. Overall, maybe not the same in run support, but I think overall he's going to be a better player. Safety to be determined, and obviously edge is a big problem.
That run support is something to keep an eye on, though, isn't it? I mean, I think Nakobe is really freaking good at that. If he's out of there, can Jihad handle that as well? Now, maybe the other stuff is more important, but stopping the run is still a big part of the game.
Yeah, but I think they'll be fine because Zach Bowen's really good at it, and I think maybe it puts more pressure on him a little bit, and maybe that takes away from his big play ability. But I think he'd be fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
People forget the first 6 games of the season when Jihad was going to be NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year.
It's true. It's true. All right, J Mac, your final thoughts here on a Thursday edition of Birds 365.
Yeah, I set off a unneeded fire, but that's my belief. AJ Brown.
Sometimes you need those, John, in the offseason.
AJ Brown is the best receiver the Eagles have ever had. That is my belief. That is my belief.
I don't know if that was the gripe. I think the gripe was more about the big picture, about overall, you think. About your thoughts overall on T.O.
Well, overall, I think T.O.'s overrated because people put T.O. Like I've heard a lot of people put T.O. Most people acknowledge Jerry Rice is number 1. And that's I've heard some people argue that T.O.'s better than Randy Moss. And I'm like,
that's not.
I mean, I don't think they watched the era of football.
But overall, do you have AJ better than T.O. to clarify here?
At this stage, yes. I mean, obviously longevity. When you talk about Hall of Fame, like Tommy McDonald, I Tommy McDonald and Harold Carmichael are in the Hall of Fame. They're in the Hall of Fame. There's a longevity part of it. If A.J. Brown never plays again, he's not making a Hall of Fame. However, he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. If his career continues 5 more years at this level or similar level, he's going to be a Hall of Fame player, and everybody will say, acknowledge, he's better than Tommy McDonald and Harold Carmichael. It's all projection at this point. They're already there. But in the moment, like I say about Aaron Rodgers playing the quarterback position, who has played the wide receiver position at a higher level for the Philadelphia Eagles than A.J. Brown? Not taking out the longevity. That remains to be seen. Anything can happen.
That's
who
fair.
in the moment has played the position better than A.J. Brown? Nobody. And it's revisionist history to talk about. And T.O. was great in that season. But, I mean, comparatively to A.J., other than the touchdowns, which are a big thing, but, I think you saw it this year with Dallas Goedert with 13 touchdowns. I mean, that's not something you judge people on, other than he's a good red zone receiver.
All right, final question, and it's different than T.O. Jerry or Randy?
Jerry's the best of all time. I think Randy, is the most gifted of all time. But Jerry, performance wins out in the end. I think Randy was more talented, but Jerry did what Jerry did. So Jerry's number one. You could argue Jerry Rice is the best football player, regardless of position.
That's
lived.
True. There is a strong argument to be made for that. All right, John, great show today, my man. I appreciate you doing it. As always, a good Thursday edition, and we will talk to you tomorrow for a Friday edition of Birds 365. The last Friday before we have some major potential sweeping changes to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, who knows? It might happen today. Who knows?
Ooh, are you talking the Phillips extension?
No, I'm not doing an Adam Schefter thing. I'm not.
All right. So what are you thinking though? When you say that, what do you mean?
That shit's happening all around the league.
All right, that's fair. All right, you don't want to give us anything. All right. John, good show, man. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right, see you.
All right, thanks, Johnny Mac. There's John McMullen joining us right here on Birds 365. Follow him at JF McMullen. A good show today. I like the hour number one combo too on the cap stuff and the all that stuff is interesting to me and how the Eagles handle it. So I thought that was a good conversation. I thought the NFL conversation was good when it comes to the moves made around the league and the trade for Trent McDuffie. I think that's a good trade for the Rams, folks. I think that's a damn good trade for the Rams. Okay. So we will see what happens. I knew you guys were going to go off on J-Mac with the TO takes. I can't say I agree with John in terms of TO as an overall player. He has 16,000 yards, 150 plus touchdowns, third all time. He's in the Hall of Fame. I don't know, John. I don't know if AJ's there, but I do agree with him that one TO year in Philly doesn't supersede 4 years of AJ here. But he says, Pump says, Zander, you let J-Mac spew his irresponsible nonsense. Hey, Pump, I'm called the moderator of the show or the host of the show. All right. I'm not here to poo-poo on John's opinions. That's for you guys to do. If John's got an opinion, he shares it out. All right. That's how it goes. I'll push back where I feel it's needed, it's necessary. But so good stuff. All right, guys. Appreciate all you guys being here today. I'll take a couple comments from the great people of JAKIB Nation before we get out of here. All right, I don't know why my damn hat is going in and out. Drives me nuts. If you guys knew how that drove me crazy. Drives me crazy. But the big one, not the little one. How about that name? The big one, not the little one. I'll call you the medium one. How's that? J-Mac the GOAT, but But T.O. better. Come on. I agree, man. Sonny Buckets. What's up, Sonny? Reggie was incredible, no doubt. But nobody made the impact of LT. That's a different conversation, but I do agree. LT was insane. Just watching him, obviously it was before my time. But Ty Rich, J-Mac is useful for his team insider. Anything should go out the other ear if he's talking about it on the field. I don't agree with that at all. I think J-Mac's pretty good football mind, man. I mean, come on. Anybody who listens to J-Mac every day knows that he's got some pretty good takes. Here's James Jones. What's up, James? Jammers. Guess what? Your team's going to stink again. What made it worse? He wins the Super Bowl to get worse. I don't know, James. Sometimes James, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Here's Rasputin. J-Mac makes opinions. Then stat searches after to validate them. Or when they don't help his cause, he says they don't matter, like with the sweat. It's really, there is some truth to that. All right. Damn, Z, I don't know what I did. What'd I do? Kirk, don't you guys miss the old Midnight Green from the 2000s? I like the shade of midnight. I like the Kellys. I happen to be a Kelly guy. All right. I happen to be a Kelly Green guy. All right. Fitness Roofer, what's up, dude? Zander, Eagles should get CB2 in the second round. I don't know, man. I don't hate it. I wouldn't be mad if they did it. I wouldn't be mad if they did it. I wouldn't be mad if they did that. I mean, cornerback too. The problem with the cornerback is that they just got two great corners. So it's like, I don't know if they're going to use another pick when they need this offense, Here's Sig Lord Zander. Who is your number one running back of all time? See, Sig, one of the things about being a younger NFL fan is outside of me going and searching highlights, which I've watched, and I've watched a lot of the documentaries, this is like a tough one for me to answer because most of the undisputed best running backs are, I was born in 98. I mean, you got Jim Brown, you got Walter Payton, you got Gale Sayers, you got Bo Jackson. I mean, those guys are all before my time. So I've watched them, but I don't necessarily put myself in a position to be able to speak confidently about this answer. For me, as a younger person, my favorite running backs growing up were easily LaDainian Tomlinson. I fucking loved. I had the light blue Chargers jersey as a kid. It was the only non-Eagle jersey I had. I had a LaDainian Tomlinson jersey. So I loved LaDainian Tomlinson. And Adrian Peterson I loved as well. But I obviously, I know there's so many more. Marshall Faulk, Emmitt Smith, O.J. Simpson, Tony Dorsett, Earl Campbell. I know all the guys. I just wasn't old enough, I can't change when I was born. You guys, I was fucking born in 98. What do you think I am? God? I'm just messing. Dude, I loved LT. When I was younger, I fucking loved LT. I went to Catholic grade school. We had, tag day, it used to be called back in the day, where you could wear like anything to school. I would break out the LT jersey all the time. Piss off. It's funny because all the youngsters, like all the kids I was in school with, they would get pissed because it wasn't an Eagles jersey. Like, shut the fuck up. I don't need to only wear an Eagles jersey. I've always been the kind of fan that pushes back on the Eagle color glasses type of guys. Yes, that's true, Keith. I remember when I was young, I loved Adrian Peterson. I actually think I had that. I lied. I lied, guys. I just caught myself in a lie. I don't lie very often, but when I do lie, I will admit it. It's not the only non-Eagle jersey I had. I had an Adrian Peterson purple. I did. I'd like to find a picture of me wearing that thing, actually. So, a contrarian. Yeah, I guess you could call myself that. I just don't like delusion, Keese. I don't like delusion. All right. I did have an AP purple, though. AP and LaDainian. Those are the best of my. I think those. I mean, I don't know how many people are listening that are as young as me or in my age bracket, but those are the best two, right? I mean, I'm not missing anybody. I mean, those are the best two. AP and LaDainian Tomlinson. That's it. Those are the guys I think of. Now, Barry was a little closer. I know obviously how good Barry was. Emmett was a little closer. Marshall Faulk was a little closer. I do remember playing like Madden like 2003 or something. And like I remember Marshall Faulk. Who else am I missing? Anybody else I'm missing that I didn't say? I don't know who I'm missing. I'd have to go and look some. But see, here's Angela. Would never buy another team's jersey. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, 10-year-old me who wanted an Adrian Peterson jersey. Dude, no, I'm Angela. I'm cooler than all the other fans because I only like Eagles. In fact, anybody who's not wearing an Eagles jersey, they suck and they're not good. Bullshit. I'm a football fan. All right. I'm a football fan. Dude, I remember, Keith, I remember Sean Alexander 100%. He was a boss in Seattle. But I met Sean Alexander when we produced the Maxwells. Dude, he's as cool and nice of a dude as it gets. Keith, I'm telling you, that guy was fucking dope. I met him because he has an actual award at the Maxwell, so he wasn't just there. He's there every year presenting the Sean Alexander Award. Which I think is best running back in the NFL that year. When I was there, it was Jonathan Taylor won it that year. I met Jonathan Taylor. He was pretty cool. But Sean Alexander, dude, he is an awesome dude. Really cool guy. Really genuine dude. I mentioned OJ. This mouth is only reserved for Eagles players. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, he's cool ass dude, Keith. Cool ass dude, Sean Alexander. I mentioned OJ, I thought. If I wear a Mahomes jersey, yeah, it's Crowley. I agree. What the fuck you gonna do, man? Shut the fuck up. Sorry for my bad language. Eddie George, that's a good one. Eddie George. There's a lot of good running backs, man. Eddie George would be considered what? A top, 25? I don't know. I'd have to go and look. Eddie George was a tank. Jerome Bettis. Yeah, that's a good one. Jerome Bettis was a beast. A lot of good running backs, man. It's a shame kind of how the NFL has like not delegitimized, but you know how it's been with running backs recently. Like they don't make the money they once did. They're not as important to teams as they once were. It's kind of a shame, man. I feel like the running back is such a one of the best positions in football, just in terms of impact and meaning to the game and the history of the game. Curtis Martin, that's a good one. I don't have any love for Curtis Martin. I don't know enough about him to give him the love. Thurman Thomas. Curtis Martin was good, though. Curtis Martin was what? A Patriots guy? He was a Patriots guy, right? If I'm remembering correctly. We now mentioned so many names. I'm going fucking blue, and I got a bad headache. You guys know when you have a headache and you can like feel the exact spot where it is? Just like fucking trying to massage it out. I told you guys, not much knocks me off my game, and nothing knocks me off my game. I'll be working all day today too, but few things fucking drive me crazy like a headache. I hate headaches. Edgerrin James. A lot of good backs, man. Big Z, you need a Tony, I'm not a big massage guy, all right? The only person I'll get a massage from is my woman. That's it, all right? Nobody's rubbing me down, Tony, outside of my lady, which she could do it, and she's good at it. Nobody's get off me or rubbing me down and shit. I see these people, they go to these like spas and salons. I'm like, what the fuck you doing letting these people grope you? My lady can touch me. That's about it. Dude, you got the hot rocks and shit. What the fuck? No, thank you. Yeah, my lady will. I'll have her give me one. That's it, though, Tony. That's it for me, Tony. Tony, I got the vet out last night. Glory. Dude, Tony, there is nothing like when your vet's away for a couple weeks and you get out. I was driving the Canyon recently, which is a great truck, nice little truck, but you get inside the vet and you're like, fucking feels good to be back in this cockpit. Fucking look around, you rub your leather a little bit, rub your steering wheel. I got out the vet last night. I sat in the car for 10 minutes before I even left, dude. Just enjoying, just nice to be back in the vet. I'm hoping for some good weather, Tony. I want to make a nice video, man. I want to make a new fresh video for ZK's Garage. We're due. I'm due for a new one. All right. We mentioned Emmett. Dad says, buying Z a gift card to Me Hung Low Massages. I'm good, bro. Save it for yourself. Save it for yourself. All right, guys. Love all you guys. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you being here. A lot of good stuff coming. I'm working on that JAKIB Discord, and I'm working on a revamp to the membership. So if you are a member on JAKIB Sport, if you're not, you're a dusty gray. And if you are a member and are still a member, it'll pay off. And if you're not, you should become one, okay? That's one of the best ways to support JAKIB Sports. I'm trying to take, right now we have about 300 members. I think just under that. Well, some fell off after the season. I want to get that to 500 to 1,000 members. I'm bringing back giveaways consistently. Legend members will get the most giveaways. Legend members will get the jersey giveaways. Yeah, Dro, you're good. If you're a member on the site, that's good too, bro. That's good too. All right, Dro, that's all good too. So they're both combined. I combined them both for the Discord. So everything should be all good. Legend members will get the most. If you're just a fan member, that's appreciated too, but that'll be somewhat lesser. A lot of stuff coming though for the members. That's the number one goal for me, to take care of the members, because that's really the number one, supporters that we have. We are supported. JAKIB is largely supported by our most loyal audience. Some people are growth channels. We're not a growth channel. We're a loyal audience channel. So appreciate all you guys doing it today. Here's BGG. I'm going to wait till you're done with the site to order a shirt. Yeah, BGG, just give me here's what happened, Bird Gang. I went to fix it. And it's one of those things, when you open up something to fix and then an entire new can of worms comes out? That's kind of what happened. All right. So I'm fixing the can of worms. Then we're going to get it all set up. New uniform branding coming, built around the logo, a whole brand guide, upgraded everything is on the way. I'm working on it all the way. All right. So Daz, I'm proud to say this, Daz. I've never purchased for anything on JAKIB, any platform. I've never purchased a single metric. I've never ran an ad. I've never ran a promotion for views. I've never bought views, subscriber. Every metric that JAKIB has is 100% organic. And I'm not accusing anybody else of doing it. I don't know who does what. I don't care. But you do see some channels grow, 60,000 subscribers. And you're like, I've always said this. And I need to get JAKIB growing faster again. But like if I'm going to gain a shit ton of subscribers, but they're not going to watch every day, it actually kind of dilutes the channel. You have a worse click-through rate. You don't have a loyal audience. Your CPM goes down because people don't stick around. They watch for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then they leave. They're flashing the pan. I like the most valuable thing for us is people that come here every day and stay here every day and watch our shows every day. That's the most valuable to us. It's not gaining 15,000 subscribers in a month, So it's different. It's a different platform compared to some others, but I'm proud of it, and we got still a long way to go and a lot of improvements to make. So I love it, man. I appreciate all you guys. Hit that like button. See you next time, everybody.
EAGLES Eagles.